Hey friends, I want to share with you today one of the weirdest and honestly one of my favorite Psalms in the Bible. And this is not like the Psalms you're probably used to in a Sunday church service, like Psalm 23 about the Lord being our shepherd, or Psalms of praise, worshiping the Lord. No, this is a Psalm of darkness. And I am so grateful it is in our Bible, because sometimes we need Psalms like this given to us essentially as an invitation for us to pray this to God. So I want to share with you just a few of the lines, and then you can read the whole thing on your own. I'd definitely encourage you to do that. But just to give you a sense of what's going on here. So the psalm starts out kind of what we think of as normal. Lord, you are the God who saves me. But then very quickly, we get the idea that this psalmist is not in a good place. Day and night I cry out to you. May my prayer come before you. Turn your ear to my cry. I am overwhelmed with troubles, and my life draws near to death. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like one without strength. So this is a person who is suffering. They are in the midst of deep difficulties. Down in 13, it says, but I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? So they're praying this prayer, but they don't feel like God is particularly close. What they're going through is weighing on them. And it seems like they've been going through this for a long time in their life. They say things like, I am confined and cannot escape. My eyes are dim with grief. And then the psalm ends with this idea of God's wrath and terror sweeping over them. And they say, all day long, they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. And then verse 18, you have taken from me friend and neighbor. Darkness is my closest friend. End of psalm. No real resolution. No, but God, I know you're good and I praise you and worship you and I know everything's going to be fine. No, it ends with darkness is my closest friend. I bet you didn't think that was in the Bible, right? Or maybe you know this psalm already and it's not very surprising to you. But to be honest, having gone through Bible school and seminary and all these different studies, this was not a psalm I was all that familiar with. I became familiar with these types of psalms, however, after my wife and I had our first child. We had this plan that we were going to have our second baby right away as soon as we could, because we wanted them to be friends and get to sort of grow up together in similar phases of life. And at first it worked. We had our first son, and then we got pregnant, or my wife got pregnant, but things didn't seem normal. And after some time, it became clear that something wasn't right. And so we went to the doctor and we got that terrible news that my wife had had a miscarriage. And it shattered some things for us. You know, we had been through difficulties in life, but this was like a new level of pain and a space of darkness. Like, God, couldn't you have healed this baby and protected them? Like, we're your followers. Aren't we doing the right things? Like, what's going on here? We didn't feel much like praising the Lord in those moments. And then when we could, we tried again, and my wife got pregnant again, and we had that same loss, 2 miscarriages in a row. And it was in those moments when psalms like this one became important. And this isn't to sort of weigh our loss against someone else's, right? We all experience things in different ways. We suffer in different ways, and our suffering was just different. But it took us to psalms like these and realize that God invites us to bring everything to God. Not just when we're on the mountaintops full of praise and happiness. Not just when we're like, wow, the Lord is my shepherd. God is with me. Because sometimes we don't feel like God is with us. Sometimes we don't have a lot of positive things to say about God. Sometimes we don't really have anything to say at all. And I think a psalm like this is really important, because I think God's deepest desire is not for us just to bring the good stuff and the praise and the worship. I think God's deepest desire is for us to bring everything. for us to wrestle it out. Like Jacob wrestled with the angel or with God in Genesis 32, however you might interpret that passage. Just staying in the relationship. I was reading and listening to one or the other, reading or listening to a marriage expert. And they were talking about the fact that one of the greatest predictors of divorce is what they call stonewalling. And what they suggested is that it's better to sort of be honest and, argue about things so you can work it out than to just shut off and not communicate or be honest at all. And I think in those moments of darkness and loss, it may be tempting to just say, well, I have nothing to say to God. I'm not sure God is here. I'm just going to walk in a different direction. And we're given Psalms like this to say, you may not feel it. You may not have the words. You may not feel like God gets it at all. But maybe you can keep wrestling. And that's what this psalm is this psalmist is saying, here's where I am, God. And even if I'm going to end with the verses, darkness is my closest friend. God, why do you reject me? Why do you turn away? God is like, that's okay. You can say those things to God. You can be honest. God desires for you to keep showing up, to wrestle it out. The Psalms share with us the full human experience, not everybody's unique, individual, named everything experience, but pretty much the full range of joy on the mountaintop and darkness in the deepest valley. And so we learned at that point in our life that God can take and handle all of it, that we can be honest with God, that we can bring it to God, and we're not going to instantly feel better. Things may not always be solved. But if we keep bringing it to God, I think ultimately we are going to experience God coming close. We were comforted. We're not grateful for the losses. There's still days where it hurts. But I do know God was with me in those moments. We did end up having another son, actually, and we're so grateful for that baby that we were blessed with. But you know what? We may not have been. That may not have been our story. I don't know what suffering you may be going through, what suffering you may have gone through in the past, or what may be ahead in the future. The Bible never promises that things are going to go exactly how we want, when we want. It doesn't mean that good things always happen. Sometimes it feels like, and is just a truth, that darkness seems to be our closest friend. But in those moments, we can bring that to God, even if we're not feeling it, even if we're not sure if God is hearing it. Maybe Psalm 88 can just be your prayer. Because if you stay in the relationship, if you keep communicating, even if the communication is rough, I think God still meets you even in that, with love, with presence, with peace, with joy, with grace. And we may not be ready for it or get it right away, but God meets us in it with comfort. God grieves with you. And so maybe Psalm 88 is the psalm you most need sometimes, where you can just say, I am like one without strength. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Why do you reject me and hide your face from me? Darkness is my closest friend. And that may be the end of it. And for a while, you may have to just sit in that. But I think sitting with it, with God, is a world of difference than walking away and saying, I can't pray, I can't say anything, God doesn't care. And it may feel like God doesn't care. But we can keep bringing that to God. And I think in the end, God does show up. So friends, may Psalm 88 be a blessing to you. Maybe the weirdest psalm of all the psalms, but also maybe one of the most important. So friends, may you keep wrestling it out. May you bring it all to God, and may God meet you in the midst of it. Thanks for joining me today, friends. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, stay connected with everything going on here on the channel. And of course, as you go forth with the rest of your day, grace and peace be with you.